Welcome to the WriterDojo with your host, Steve Diamond.
That's me.
And Larry Correa.
Hey guys.
Today's episode, Business Basics. Round one.
All right, everyone. Welcome back to the WriterDojo. We're super happy to be back with you today. And today, we thought we would start with one of the most important, often overlooked items when it comes to starting your writing career. And that is the business basics.
Yeah, this is a big one. We often get drafted to be on panels about this topic on cons. This is the not sexy part of writing. Everybody gets hung up on the artistic stuff. This is the stuff that makes it so you can pay your mortgage.
Yeah, you know, it's really interesting. I think you and I both know quite a few authors who apparently didn't get the memo that they're supposed to be, like careful and thoughtful with money and how they handle it.
There are train wrecks. I would call these guys dumpster fires, but they're more like never-ending dumpster phoenixes. It just keeps going. We have some horror stories. We won't share too many names about people we like, but I know authors who basically work for the IRS now because they failed to pay their taxes when they were starting out. We're going to talk about that kind of thing today, getting published. We won't go too much into independent versus traditional versus hybrid because we'll talk about that more in depth later, the pros and cons of both of those. But we'll talk about getting your books out there, getting them published, and then when you're making money, how you actually deal with that.
Yeah, it's really unfortunate. I think that the biggest error that happens for so many authors is most authors are creatives, right?
Yeah, they don't tend to be nuts and bolts business people.
Right.
It's that old left brain, right brain thing.
Yeah, not every author out there happens to have been an accountant in a previous life or in a current life, right?
Yeah, me and Steve are a little bit weird in this, in that we come from business backgrounds. We come from number crunchy, analytical business backgrounds, and made the jump to creative writing. Whereas a lot of people, they just do the creative writing thing first, and they don't have that business background, and it can really hurt you.
Yeah, and it's like I don't want people to think that it's easy, but there are some very basic things. So what I want to talk about first, Larry, is, this is the absolute most basic item, and that is taxes.
We might be.
I say this facetiously.
Well, we might be getting a little ahead of ourselves because we haven't got to the part where they actually make money yet. But yeah, let's go ahead and talk about that. When you are making income, a lot of people, as a writer, you're getting royalty income, you're collecting sales money from your books. A lot of people don't realize that they need to actually pay quarterly taxes on this. You are a business. We kind of do a disservice. Most Americans, they just think taxes are this magical thing where it just magically comes out of your paycheck, every single paycheck. And then at the end of the year, you get money back. No, when you're a small business owner, which is what you are as a writer, you have to pay those taxes every quarter to the federal government, or they will swallow your soul.
I remember being on a panel of this nature once, and this girl raises her hand and says, "Steve, I've just been starting to receive money for the purposes of writing." I was like, "Sweet, yeah, that's the goal,
Good
right?
For you, that's awesome.
Giddy up." And she said, "So how do I know when I'm supposed to start paying taxes on that money?" And I said, like you've already received money? She said, "Yeah." I went, "So did you pay taxes on it?" She said, well, no, not yet." I said, "Yeah, that's a problem."
Yeah.
Like the idea is, look, if your whole goal is to get paid, and sometimes that's a little amount, sometimes it's a big amount, just assume and just get in the practice of, even when it's a tiny, tiny short story fee, say, just get in the practice early of cordoning off 25 to 33% of that and paying it as taxes.
Well, one thing I recommend writers do is, as soon as possible, once you have your stuff out there, you need to separate your business expenses from your personal expenses. So go start a bank account that is specifically a business account. Run all your writing business stuff through this one bank account. Don't ever run your writing stuff through your personal account anymore. Everything goes to this separate bank account. That's the simplest and easy way to break your writing business out from your day-to-day rest of your life. If it goes through that bank account, it is related to you writing. And that could be office supplies. That could be computer. That could be your computer that you write on. It's whatever expenses are related to that. And then you have that money separate out of there. And then as money comes in, as you collect checks, you put those into your business account. Don't put those directly in your personal account. And I recommend really talking to a CPA, especially when you're first starting out and you're making a little bit of money. Go talk to a CPA, do a consult. They will help walk you through all the paperwork you need. They'll charge you a couple $100 for this service because they're going to talk to you for an hour. However, take notes, and the stuff they tell you is worth its weight in gold, and then go forth and apply that.
Yeah, and usually what I've noticed happens, and this isn't just with writing, guys. This is with all small businesses.
Well, we've seen a lot of small businesses crash and burn.
Yeah, but there's a lot of, when you're in the idea phase and you're starting to get going, a lot of times, like, stuff starts happening for you in terms of money before you've actually decided to become an official business in terms of incorporation. I don't remember who I was talking to. Maybe was it you? I don't remember if it was your CPA, who I know as well. We know the same CPA. It seems like I remember them saying, as an author, once you were making $15,000 a year, that was around the best time to actually incorporate yourself as a writer.
I'm trying to remember.
I don't remember, though.
I've had this conversation with them, and it's going to vary state to state too. And so, also, we should put a little caveat on here that Steve and I are not giving financial advice.
Yeah, this is our obligatory. Yeah. We are not your CPAs, and therefore we are not giving you official CPA advice.
Legally speaking, neither of us are giving financial advice. This is just some good stuff to think about.
These are financial recommendations.
Speak to an actual CPA in your
guidelines.
State. But yeah, I can't remember. It's going to depend on your state what your cutoff is going to be when it's worth forming an actual business entity separate from yourself. I think I did it a long time ago, but I was a couple years into this. I think I incorporated. I was making probably about $25,000-$30,000 a year was when I made the jump, and I went ahead. At that point, I formed Korea Tech. Korea Tech Incorporated is actually my S corp. Is what I went with. I've heard arguments in favor of doing an LLC or an S corp, but that's one of those. Talk to your CPA. I went with an S corp. Most of us, I think, most writers are S corps.
Yeah.
And then just go through and then very specifically follow the same rules of keeping your expenses separate from your personal, and get your tax stuff in order and do your quarterly withholdings. And after you do your quarterly withholdings, then you can take money from that business account and put it into your personal account and spend it to live off of. Make sure the government gets their piece first.
Yeah, government always gets their part. I mean, what's the joke that you always have? Like the first third of all of your books is written specifically for the IRS?
Yeah, basically the first third of every book I write has been for the government, which really sucks. But you know what, though? That means the IRS gets that first act where, stuff's really not going yet. That's not true. We know that. We'll talk about acts later, but you got to start with a bang. But unfortunately, so the IRS steals from me the first, quarter to a third of everything I write. And then the state, Utah has pretty crappy state taxes, actually. Our state income tax sucks.
It's actually pretty high.
Yeah, it's pretty high here. Yeah, it's kind of lame.
One of the things that I think a lot of people misunderstand about taxes that I want to make clear for people, and you alluded to it kind of in the intro, is that it's this magical thing that just happens automatically. And that at the end of the year, if you're lucky, you get some of that money back.
I've seen people actually celebrate that. Like, they're all excited, like, oh, I'm getting a huge refund. Woo! And like they're happy. They're like thanking the government for their huge refund. It's like, dude, you gave them a interest-free loan for a year.
Yeah, just so everyone understands the sheer aversion and hatred that Larry and I have for taxes.
We're accountants.
When you get a tax refund, that's because you paid the government too much of your money.
Yeah, you screwed
in taxes.
up, man.
Yeah, you effed up. And so they're saying, oh, hey, thanks for that interest-free loan, right? Here's your money back. High five. See you again next year.
That said, as complicated as mine is, and all my income now is from writing stuff, I usually wind up getting a refund at the end of the year because it's not till the end of the year that I can put in a lot of my deductions, like my big charitable contributions for the year, putting money into my IRA, that kind of thing. And unfortunately, and it irks me every time, because then, a couple months later, it's like, oh, look at this great money just showed up. It's a miracle. No, I know where that came from. That was mine to begin with. And they gave me a small portion of it back because I came up with some good business excuses.
If you're looking at, if you're listening to Larry and I rant about how horrible taxes are and how much we hate everything.
This is actually a writing podcast.
This is a writing podcast, but here's the point that I wanted to drive, and this is why I kind of drove the conversation this way, Larry. And that's you and I mean, we've done accounting as a living. We're business dudes. We've done this.
Yeah.
The average Joe Schmo who is out there because he or she is a creative and wants to write a book, they're not going to have the several, between the two of us, we probably have 40 plus years of accounting experience.
Sadly.
I know. It just means we're old. All that means is we're old, Larry.
Wow.
So,
ouch.
We have many, many, many years of accounting experience at all different levels that you probably don't, Mr. and Mrs. listeners out there, you probably don't have that. And that's okay. The one piece of advice that Larry gave that is probably the most sage is, look, this is all complicated. We get it. Taxes, all that stuff, starting up a business, incorporating. The incorporation isn't as difficult as it sounds, but it can still drive people crazy. This is what CPAs are for. Honestly, you don't have to be an expert. You don't have to be an expert in everything, guys.
Well, to put this in perspective, I took a great deal of pride of doing my own taxes because, I was a professional accountant while I started my writing career. I took a great deal of pride in doing all my taxes until one year. I had a very complicated year. I had a really good lot of writing income. I built a house. I sold a house. Had a bunch of other stuff going on. I got to the end of the year, and I owed a ton of money. And I looked at that, and I said, you know what? I can't keep up on the laws. I can't, because the laws change constantly. That's why we're not giving you financial advice. And at that point, I was like, you know what? I'm going to have to swallow my pride and go to an outside expert. So I went to a CPA that we had worked with before, back when I was in business. And I asked them to do my taxes, and they saved me probably 5 times what they charged me, because they know all the current stuff. It's their job to keep up on this. As a creative writer type, your job is to write stories and keep up on your imaginary world. Keeping up on the real world cuts into that.
When Larry and I started this podcast, I think you guys remember one of the first things we said in our intro episode was, look, Larry and I are busy being creatives, and and then I have the silly day job. This is why we have Jack doing all of our editing.
Yeah, Jack volunteered to help us out, and we could not do this podcast without him because neither one of us has the bandwidth to go learn that kind of skill set. There's just no way.
And so the same principle applies to tax type things, right?
Absolutely.
Like guys, remember, you don't have to be the expert in everything. It's okay to pay someone to be the expert for you, especially when it comes to matters of taxes and keeping your ass out of jail.
Yeah, and that is serious, guys. They don't mess around with that. Look at Wesley Snipes, okay? You don't want to be Wesley Snipes.
Or Nicolas Cage.
The guy who doesn't turn down any movie now because he probably can't. I really like Nicolas Cage, too.
Oh, I do, too. But I think what we see, the common thread is people are so enamored with getting paid that they forget that along with getting paid, especially in the United States, comes that other shoe, which is the taxes.
Well, let's talk about the getting paid part. We've not talked about that too much yet, and this is something we need to get into. Basically, how writers make a living and how we make this stuff work. There's 2 basic schools or methods, great houses, whatever you call them. There's traditional and indie publishing. Yeah, I've been reading Dune.
Yeah. Can't help it.
Yeah. Well, the movie's coming out, and we're going to do the role.
And I was going to say, and that's our next game.
I got the rule book, by the way.
Nice.
But so there's indie publishing and traditional publishing. Traditional publishing is your old school. You sell your rights to your book to a publishing house. They publish it and sell it through bookstores, and then they pay you a percentage of the cover price in the form of royalties. So we'll talk about that a little bit. Then there's independent, which is huge now, where you just do all that yourself. And that's not necessarily as much distributed in bookstores. However, you do primarily all your selling online. Amazon is the big one. Amazon really has revolutionized the industry. And we'll have whole episodes about these two different things and how to market in them. But either way, you are selling a product and getting a percentage of the cover price in royalties. I believe if you're doing it independent, you're getting a check every month, which is kind of like a regular paycheck, which is pretty cool. If you're doing it traditional through a big publishing house, you'll get an advance up front. We'll talk about advances a little bit later. And then you also get royalties, but you do not collect any royalties until the advance earns out. Then you get royalties, depending on your publishing house, every 3 months to 6 months, which is a little weird because you got to budget now for a quarter or half a year.
Yeah.
Which is really weird for a lot of people.
All right. So let's take a break really quick, Larry. And then when we come back, let's go ahead and get to the nuts and bolts of contracts and kind of go really specific in terms of like royalties and advances and all that jazz.
That's a good idea, Steve.
And helping people understand the mindset of only getting paid twice a year.
Okay.
All right.
The Chaos Goddess Saga has been quiet since the destruction of the City of Monsters, but Monster Hunter International knows he is still out there somewhere, plotting, waiting for his chance to unravel reality. When Owen Pitt and the MHIT discover that one of Isaac Newton's ward stones is being auctioned off, they decide to steal the magical superweapon and use it to destroy Zog once and for all. But before the stone can be handed off, it is stolen by a mysterious thief with ties to MHI and the Vatican Secret Guard. It's raced against time, the Secret Guard, a spectral bounty hunter, and a whole bunch of monsters to acquire the Ward Stone and use it against Assad. For as dangerous as the Chaos God is, there is something much older and infinitely more evil awakening deep in the jungles of South America. Book number 8 in the critically acclaimed Monster Hunter International series by New York Times bestselling author Larry Correia, Monster Hunter Bloodlines is available on Amazon or wherever books are sold.
All right, everyone. Welcome back. Larry and I have been talking to you all about the business basics. And for the first half of the episode, as Larry and I want to do, we tend to rant about things that we dislike, and that turned into taxes. Now, that's okay. That's super important. And just remember, taxation is theft and it's evil. So, but where we left off was really talking about kind of the nuts and bolts of contracts. Now, this is the part that I think so many authors, writers, whatever you want to call it, that this is their first taste of success, is when they actually get a contract and they sign it.
Yeah. Now, the word of caution on contracts, there's the publishing industry is like any other industry. There's sharks in it. There's a lot of really aggressive contracts out there, a lot of different size publishing houses. Some are more honest than others. Some of the big publishing houses will pay you pretty good up front, but they tend to be kind of notorious for how they treat their writers like crap if you don't immediately rise to the top and start making piles of money. Other publishing houses have reputations where they're a little more patient and give you time to develop as an author and develop your business. Either way, you're going to have a contract. And your contract's going to specify how you get paid, the manner of everything in there, what you need to deliver, what times you need to deliver it, size. It'll have all the parameters in there for everything from how your book's going to be distributed to how you're going to negotiate disagreements, arbitration, that kind of thing. And so very important, guys, when you get offered a contract, read that contract carefully. If you are not comfortable doing this yourself, don't be ashamed of roping in somebody who knows what they're doing and having them look at it also. I've been asked a lot over the years by friends and neighbors that have gotten their first publishing contracts where they've come and asked me to read their contract. And there's been some that I've read it and I was like, I would not sign this piece of crap. This is awful.
Yeah, and once again, everyone, just like how Larry and I talked about our umpteen gajillion years of accounting experience together, we also both worked in the government contracting realms.
We were contract accountants.
We were contract accountants, and we were reading over government contracts pretty much on a daily, weekly basis.
Yeah, they're horrible.
and they're terrible.
But I've
So
seen
when
some
we
from
s-
publishing houses that are even worse.
Oh, right. And so, as bad as you can imagine a government contract being in terms of just pure idiocy or in legalese or obfuscating the truth or what have you, don't just assume that because you got this cool publishing contract and maybe you happen to be buddies with the person who owns that company or acquaintances with that person, that it's going to be super friendly to you. One of the first things that I always look at, Larry, is how are my royalties being given to me? So is the royalty that I'm getting, is it being generated off gross cover price or is it off your net profit?
Yeah, now that's one where people can get really sneaky, and I've seen some small publishing houses get pretty shisty on that. And it's kind of like the joke about, Hollywood. Always get your money up front with Hollywood, because Hollywood accounting is legendary for making it look like you get your money on the background and then nothing ever makes profit, because they're really good at spreading that money around. And the publishing houses will do the same thing. Not really the bigger, more well-known ones, because they have, they've been around too long. They're legit businesses. But some of the little smaller publishers, I've seen stuff where it's like, well, we get you, we'll give you a percentage off the back end after we pay all our expenses. Except they arrange their expenses in a manner that, they are getting paid before you. They'll have like the marketing company just happens to be owned by the guy's wife. We've seen that happen before. We have to pay the art director. Oh yeah, I'm the art director. So on and so forth. And so you get scraps. Now, industry standard is going to be a percentage of cover price. Usually on paperbacks, it's 8%, I believe. I think that's standards.
I'm trying to think back to some of our contracts, Larry. I think
It varies.
Yeah, I think
a little
in
bit.
general, you get a lower percentage for the first X amount of copies sold.
Oh, yeah, and then it'll jump after you've done this many copies. It'll
Yeah.
jump to another percentage.
25, 50,000, something like that. Then
Yeah.
they typically jump it up a couple percentage points.
Something that most people aren't going to hit on a mid-list book anyway. Hardcovers will usually pay you like 20%, 25. I think it's 20%.
Yeah, again, it just
Which
depends.
is nice, because they're selling them for more expensive. But there will be stuff in your contract about like discount and bulk sales, that kind of thing. Because certain online deals will bump that down or up. Ebooks are huge. Because all ebooks are almost always going to be sold for a fixed rate, a fixed amount, and whatever the percentage is on that, you negotiate with your publisher. I think it's like 25, 30% is awesome. Whereas if you're doing independent publishing where there is no middleman, it's just you, I believe those guys, if they follow the Amazon pricing, things like 70%.
I think it's 70 or 75% now.
Which is really nice until you realize that you're your entire marketing department. So good luck with that. We'll talk a whole nother episode about that.
My favorite accounting joke, Larry, because we're accountants, is it's the guy that goes into his job interview and the only question that the prospective accountant is asked is, well, what's 1 + 1? And all of the other people are like, oh, it's 2, it's 2, it's 2. And then one guy, he gets asked the question, he kind of looks around, goes and, shuts the drapes, and he says, well, what do you want it to be? And so this
One of
is
the oldest
the
jokes in accounting.
but it's still the best one.
Yeah.
And that I say that to illustrate the point of Larry just illustrated all of the super concrete details when it comes to getting stuff that's gross, off gross. When we say gross, we mean cover price. It is just your unadjusted number. However, again, when we talk about net and why we talk about why it's in most cases you shouldn't even be touching it, that's because for the accountants at these places, 1 + 1 is whatever they want it to be when it comes to their expenses. So unless they're going to give you very specific details as to exactly what is included in their expenses, so that you can hone in on exactly what your net royalty is going to be. My advice is to be very hesitant about those sorts of deals.
Big time. Other stuff to watch out for also in your contracts. It'll be spelled out what's called ancillary rights. Ancillary rights are all the things, like normally when we sell a contract for a book, it's for producing this worldwide in the English language. for that particular publishing house? What about other languages? What about film, which is called dramatic rights, or audiobook rights? Audiobook is huge. Audiobook's like a third of my income or a quarter of my income. Audiobook is great. So this is all got to be spelled out in your contract, what you're getting for everything. And also, sometimes you're not giving this stuff away. Sometimes if you're especially if you're selling with a smaller publisher, you're only signing away the English rights, and that's it. And then you keep that other stuff, and then you try to develop that yourself.
Yep.
I guess that does kind of segue us into agents too.
Yeah. So agents are a sticky issue for a lot of people.
Well, because I am unagented.
As am I.
Yeah. Okay, so for those of you guys that don't know what an agent is, this is a thing that used to be a lot more common in publishing. Agents are people who represent you. You ever hear you're watching TV and a Hollywood show about Hollywood is like, oh, I got a call from my agent. He's got a gig. Basically, agents are people that go out and they represent you as their client, and their goal is to get business for you. However, in the writing world, in exchange for that, agents get 15% of everything you make, which is a lot of money. Now, 15% is a big chunk of your income. So the only reason to have an agent is if they bring you
more than that
value
15%.
Greater than that 15%, exactly.
Right.
I myself am not agented. I just have done everything on my own. I'm also not scared of contracts or any of the business stuff.
Again, you and I, we've seen a lot of contracts in our days.
We're kind of anomalous on that. I know a lot of friends that are agented and they love their agents. I know other people who've had agents and fired them. I've known agents that struck me as good, decent people working hard for their writers. And I've seen other agents that struck me as total shyster pieces of garbage. They're one step above, used car salesmen, and that's insulting to used car salesmen, really, because these guys were just like milking their authors. I know of one agent. Oh, I want to name her because she's so horrible. But she was straight up because she decided she wanted to launch her writing career. So she would go pitch projects belonging to her authors, but then she would undersell her authors by pitching her own stuff and sell herself before she sold her clients. So she would get her clients bumped from things so she could take
in
it.
her own favor. And that's such a massive conflict of interest to be even doing that.
Well, it used to be that people thought you had to have an agent. I disagree. A lot of people are still caught in that old mindset. And what it is, really, agents serve as a first layer of defense for publishing houses, for traditional publishing houses, for really crappy writers. They screen out the bad, and that way they have a relationship with the publishing house, theoretically. So they go direct to the publisher, who they have a relationship with, and they say, I got this thing, you're really going to like it, you should buy it. So you skip over the slush pile, and you go right to the decision makers. Theoretically, that's how they're supposed to work, which will make you a lot more money. They're supposed to negotiate better deals for you. They're supposed to sell all those ancillary rights for you in foreign languages and whatnot. Do they actually do that?
Who knows?
Sometimes, I think some do.
In your ideal situation, if you get an agent, is that agent that doesn't just have contacts at one publisher, it has contacts at all the different publishers.
Yeah, they're going to know who to go to lunch with and schmooze and go direct.
There's an author I know, as well, Brian McClellan.
Yeah.
Great guy. Great stuff. And I remember when he first got his agent for his Powder Mage series, his agent went out and was like, blah, and just went out to everyone.
Yeah, good.
And from what I recall, and I might be, and I'm not going to say any numbers or anything, but there were a lot of people who were interested in his series.
See, that's awesome.
And so, just like anything, think of it in terms of a bidding war. Like your ideal situation is everybody fighting over the privilege of you.
Yeah, I have a funny story about that. So when I first started out, before I self-published, I submitted to all the agents, just like I thought you were supposed to. And I submitted to all the publishing houses directly. I did everything. I got rejected 100 times, literally 100 times. I had a shoebox full of rejections. And I remember a couple years later, I've blown up huge. Monster Hunter's killing it. That series is doing awesome. It's a bestseller. I go to this event, some con.
It was World Fantasy in 2011.
Yeah, in San Diego.
Yeah, we crashed that one.
Yeah, 2011. We crashed that. And so I remember we were at a party, a room party, and this one famous, really well-known agent comes up.
He's a good agent.
Yeah, he's got a really good rep, but I'm going to make fun of him on this one. And he comes up to me and he goes, "Wow, Larry Correa, nice to meet you. Oh my gosh. Wow, you just came out of nowhere. I mean, you just blew up huge. Who's your agent?" I go, "I don't have one." And he goes, "Really? You don't have an agent? Well, we should talk." I was like, "Well, I submitted to you guys and you rejected it." "Oh, well." And then I just went on. With the party, doing my thing. So don't take it wrong. Just because you get rejected doesn't necessarily mean anything. We'll talk about rejection a lot.
Oh yeah. We'll have at some point we're gonna have a whole episode about dealing with rejection.
I wish I would have saved some of my old ones I got rejected on, but I blew them up. I literally took the shoebox, and when we moved, and I blew it up. I put a jug of tannerite under it and under the shoebox and just blew it to smithereens. So, yeah, I don't have those to read anymore. Sorry. We could have read them on air.
So, what I'm gathering from all this, Larry, and correct me if I'm wrong, is just like anything in this whole writing world, is there's not just one way. You can get an agent and you can get published. You can go indie, you can go traditional, you can kind of mix and merge the two, although I think that's easier once you're established in one of the venues.
Yeah.
Contracts can come in all different shapes and sizes. I think both mine and your biggest recommendation when it comes to contracts is, man, read those things a couple dozen times before you sign.
Well, across the board, any of the business-related stuff is do your homework. There's a lot of resources out there available. There's a lot of people who have done this, who are willing to give you advice and willing to help you. Don't get ahead of yourself and blunder into something that you're not willing to do. We didn't mention right of first refusal.
Oh, gosh.
That's a huge one. So right of first refusal is a thing where you sell something to a publisher, and the publisher says, well, from now on, you submit all your stuff to us first, and we get to look at it first and decide whether we want it or not. And that's fine.
Well, for example, on the good side, you and I, in our I keep wanting to call it by the old title, by Grunt's Eye View, Servants of War.
Yeah.
So our contract specifically states that Bain has the right of first refusal for anything in that world.
Yeah,
as far as novels go.
Which makes total sense.
And that makes total sense.
Marketing and business perspective.
However, you and I both know of a couple individuals that have done some right of first refusals where it was carte blanche.
It was evil.
They could do anything they wanted, and they could take as long as they wanted, and then they could, take your firstborn.
The worst I ever saw, which was just downright evil, was right of first refusal was basically if they didn't buy it, they forbid him from selling anything that could be considered competition. Yeah. Like if it was similar, it could be considered competition for that book, which means if they didn't buy it, he couldn't sell anything to anyone else. And all they'd have to do is, well, it's science fiction, so it's close, it's competition, which is stupid in every way, but that's the nature of some of these contracts.
Yeah, you have to be really, really careful out there. There are the people out there that want you to pay them to publish your book, which is completely backwards.
That's another one, too. Any agent that says you have to pay them, run. It's a scam.
Yeah.
Scam. Automatic, it's a scam. Same thing with like little vanity publishing houses. Basically, guys, the money flows to the author. That's how it works. If you get an agent, the money's going to flow to you, but they're going to take a cut of that. That's what they do. But if the agent's like, well, I'll represent you, but you got to give me $5,000 up front. No, run away.
No, if you're going to pay money, guys, then you might as well be self-published.
Oh, yeah. If you're going to spend the money, just do it yourself.
Then do it yourself. Spend on the marketing, spend on covers,
well, especially
spend
if you
on
drop
editing.
$5,000 on marketing, that's a pretty good chunk of change
that's
for a first
huge
book
amount of money.
You can put together a pretty good product for that.
That's bigger than most people's first book advances.
Oh, yeah. We didn't talk about advanced size much, but we're at 30 minutes, though.
You know what? Guys, be patient. Give us like 4 more minutes.
Okay, so advances.
4 more minutes.
Real fast. Last thing we'll talk about. Advances. Guys, a lot of people have this Hollywood idea that advances are millions of dollars. That is not the case.
Not unless your name's Stephen King.
No, and we talked about that a little bit in one of our episodes where we mentioned, he can do whatever he wants, gets millions of dollars. No, really, most books, when you're a nobody that nobody's ever heard of, your advances a few $1,000s, $5,000, $10,000. A good advance would be like $25,000 50,000. I know some guys for the first books got 50, but that's rare. I do know a couple guys who've gotten in the six figures, but that's usually a real serious
rare.
anomaly.
You know, in general, guys, advances, think of it as a measure of, or a measurement of the risk that a publisher is willing to take on you as an unproven person.
Right. And the pro of a big advance means that they are willing to, they've demonstrated that they're investing in you, which is good. The disadvantage of a big advance is when you're a new guy, that's a lot harder to earn out. And when I say earn out, remember, you do not collect royalties until you've sold enough copies to make up for that advance.
Yeah. Just in terms of basic math, guys, pretend your advance is $1,000 and pretend your royalty is $1 for every book that you sell. Do the math. You got to sell 1,000 books just to break even for the publisher.
You see another dime.
And you will not see another dime until then.
And some of the big publishing houses are pretty awful about this. They'll give a guy a $20,000 advance. Then they'll give him no marketing whatsoever.
Yep.
His books will go out and no one's heard of him. No one's ever heard of this guy before. The books will do And then, but on their books, on their accounting books, this guy's a loser.
Yeah.
He didn't earn out his advance.
Yeah, he's in the red for a long time. And there are quite a few publishers that take this even a step further, and they'll buy your entire series from you. They'll buy a trilogy from you.
Yeah, that was when I was a new one. I saw that a couple years ago for the first time.
The whole basket accounting thing.
Yeah, we're thinking it's probably the same guy too, where he got a 3-book deal and it was a good size advance. I think he got a 6-figure advance. However, he does not collect royalties until the 3rd book was out.
Well, and until until royalties had eclipsed his advance for all 3 books. I mean, it was insane.
Yeah, so this guy is like 6 years in before he sees a dime after his advance.
You know, and look, publishers, they're hoping to throw stuff against the wall, and they're hoping that some Amazon or Netflix or someone's going to come and give you a movie deal. They're hoping that you're going to knock it out of the park and become the next whoever the next lightning in a bottle author is.
Yeah.
But the reality is most authors, like 99% of authors, go out there and it's tough sledding for them from start to finish. And so every time you get your advance, you look at it and you go, okay, I want to earn this out. I need to earn this out. Now, some people are fortunate and they have great publishers like you know ourselves, Larry.
Yeah.
We have great publishers that
I've
that
earned
actually
out almost every advance I've ever gotten in the first royalty period.
Yeah.
And my advances
great.
now are pretty good because I have a proven track record. They know approximately what I will sell. They know how big my fan base is. So my advances now are rather good.
Yeah, your advances are increasing proportionally to the sales that you generate.
But when I started out, my advances were tiny. But on the bright side of that, it makes you look really good when you earn out your advance the week the book comes out. It makes you look awesome. So, look on the bright side if you get the small one.
All right. So everyone, thank you for your patience on this one. Larry and I kind of, as we do, we tend to ramble a little bit, chat, do the normal stuff because that's who we are.
Because taxation is theft.
Because taxation is theft. So thank you all for listening to us. And again, think about it this way, guys. And always remember this. There's a whole bunch of different ways to do everything. There's no one gospel rule except pay those taxes. Pay that theft tax. Because if you don't, the IRS will come and murder you. So with that, thank you everyone for joining us on another episode of the WriterDojo, and we'll see y'all next time.
WriterDojo is Steve Diamond and Larry Correa. Produced by Jack Wilder and Baron Hare Studios. Theme song, Word Mercenaries by Craig Nybo. New episodes come out every Wednesday wherever you stream your content. If you enjoyed this podcast, you can help support us by going to anchor.fm/WriterDojo, by leaving us a 5-star rating or review, and by helping to spread the word. All questions and comments can be emailed to questions@writerdojo.com.
Because taxation is theft.
Because taxation is theft.